Okay, we have next up a case study of social media. Our next panel, it's not a panel, it's actually a smaller version interview with Nestle talking about their findings for putting together a global social media plan. That's a challenge that a lot of brands are facing, many of them in this room. How do you resolve something that has to speak to a very local issue or local concerns, yet falls within the constraints of what a global brand has to do? So for that, we've got Walter Jennings, who's going to be our moderator. Walter, if you come on up, and then welcome our Nestle guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Thomas. Please join me on the stage. I've got Hannelore and Paolo joining us from Nestle. And our apologies to those of you in the back of the room. It is 5 p.m. and we choose to sit. So listen, when we heard earlier from Sandy Carter at IBM about Bayer increasing their patent level by 15% using social media, you know, it really brought me back to that conversation we had earlier about you bringing social and changing Nestle from the inside out. Hannelore, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. For Nestle, social media is not a vision, it is a reality. And we have in the center, we have the absolute support and commitment from our board. So the top-down decision is also made. And we identified, for example, 3 key pillars in which we invest. One is listening. So for us, listening is very important. We building up listening capabilities inside the center, but also in our markets. For those who don't know, Nestle is a decentralized organization. So we're giving guidelines and frameworks from the center into the markets, and they are knocking heavily on our doors because they want to move fast in social media. And listening for us is very important because we are listening to all the signals in conversations. So obviously to all the social platforms, but also to the direct consumer contacts, to the feedback from consumers on websites. We're looking into search. How do the consumers search, but not only our consumers, the consumers of our brands and categories, so that we can deepen our insight about our brands and
Hannelore,
better engage.
And Hannelore, when we spoke the other day, Paolo, you had mentioned active listening is such a part of Nestle that it's kind of a corporate culture. Yep. And you used it not in crisis management, but in crisis avoidance.
Yes, as Hannelore said, and in fact, it would be interesting to show the slides that Hannelore prepared. Because what we're doing is, it's not just about listening and asking our agencies, okay, prepare us a weekly report or prepare us a daily report. What we're actually doing, and starting with what Hannelore had prepared at the center, is building a digital capability, meaning the monitoring screens and the monitoring platforms inside Nestle as essentially a command center. And what we have in place today at the center, led really by Hannelore's team, is what we call a digital acceleration team, where you have this command center live right now in Vevey, where on the different screens you have on top, we monitor all of the social media trends all over the world, making the keywords essentially all our brands. And therefore, if there's any crisis or issue that is early detected, the social media team, I'm stealing your show, sorry. The social media team is able to detect it very early on, and we're able to engage before it becomes a major crisis.
Hannelore, why this transformation? I mean, what's the driving force behind putting social in the center of kind of a historic, iconic brand like Nestle?
Yeah, you just said it. It's an iconic brand, and it's the biggest food company in the world. So food is close to our hearts. It's a very emotional topic. And so the talks are out there, the conversation, so you can only win if you tune in, if you know, if you're ahead of, if you look into trends, and if you listen to what the consumers want, It helps us, it has been said already earlier today, it helps us in innovation, it helps us in creation, but first and furthermore, it helps us to engage, and it helps us to also prevent crisis, because there are a lot of sensitive topics around the food business, as you can imagine.
You know, I'd worked for 5 years at Ford Motor Company, and we'd gone through cultural transformation there. Usually when you're having a major change, like bringing social right into the heart of the organization, you'll get the top levels of management that will accept that because the CEO tells them to. You get the lower levels that are excited, but you know, you sometimes get resistance at what we used to call the layer of clay, you know, that middle management level. How is this changing the culture at Nestle?
Well, it is actually the biggest challenge, that's right. But as long as you work in marketing, or as you, I mean, I like to say that, of course, the younger generation picks it up easier, but we have a lot of discussions with our brand builders, our middle management, saying that we try to convince them, if you work in marketing, it's part of the game. You need to know and you need to embrace it. So we do a lot of training. The market sent in their into the center, for example, for an eight months program. They sent in their people from from brands, from corporate communication, and they go through a thought leadership program, which is built around training, hands-on listening, on issue monitoring, on brands, but also on engaging on the global platforms.
And if I were to add to that, I mean, you see the workstations here. The people manning that are not the full-time people based in Switzerland. They're really the people who come from the markets. They send their own local digital champion to the digital acceleration team. They man the stations for 8 months. They learn about listening and about engaging. They get to experience, you know, crises or mini crisis or crisis prevention, but also brand building. And so what happens is they're like Padawans learning in this, you know, Jedi school. And then when they come back, they then influence everybody in terms of, hey, this is what listening is all about. And this is what we need to set up in the market. So you get those 12 candidates, and then you influence 12 countries, every time.
And Hannelore, look, next time your slides, you've got to put the team in there. Yeah. It's a beautiful looking center. But just one, I'm getting a lot of
There's
comments.
The second team in there, actually. The first team, just the first 8 months, we launched this in January, and the second team has just joined this week.
Fantastic. Look, I'm getting a lot of comments from Napoleon Biggs, Charles Tan, Nicola Mungs, talking about 24/7 listening and crisis avoidance. And Paolo, food safety and food quality is a big issue in China.
Yes.
Tell me about active listening in China and how that helps you with food issues and safety issues.
Well, I think, Hannelore, if you could move the slides a couple of bits. I think the one thing, we've been talking about Weibo a lot. And the one learning I've had in China is that while Weibo is very social, particularly Sina Weibo, the one thing that we need to understand is that Sina as a company actually started out as a news portal. And then they opened up a Weibo as a social portal. But actually, a great amount of the Weibo usage is to get news updates. So whether it's a news, like, for example, hearing about the, next slide, please. Yeah, maybe I'll do it. Hearing about the train crash in Shanghai, which spread on Weibo even before it spread on the networks, that's how consumers behave towards our brands as well. It may be a real food crisis. It may be a rumored food crisis. And in the past year, when we were doing our active listening, we're seeing that, you know, a rumor in the UK can spread into a bad news for your product, even if it has nothing to do with the products that we sell in China. So what have we done in order to respond? Our key actions are, of course, as Hannelore said, in-house listening for China. What the DAT listens to are the global channels for Facebook, for Twitter, etc. Those are not active in China. We need to be setting up our own in-house listening with actually your next speaker providing a lot of that service for us, CIC. But the second thing, it's not enough to listen. You have to be able to respond rapidly. And rapid response takes two things. The first one is really crisis planning scenarios and a response protocol so that when that type of response comes out, your team is ready. And also frequent training of the team and drill running in terms of if this is the issue that you're facing, how do you respond? How do you respond? So So that's a key part of our program. And slowly we're transforming it now into more insight mining. So from crisis prevention, crisis management, into now how do we deal with all the neutral posts and maybe even positive good ideas that come from consumers on Weibo, leading to both sharper marketing engagement and consumer advocacy for us.
Hannelore, a lot of oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add to this what Paolo just said. For us, it's going, although we have fantastic tools in-house, it's going beyond listening the tool. It's really the what's next, like we call it. So this is all putting our insights into really relevant, meaningful context for our marketing people or for our stakeholders. So what does it mean, what we get out of these consolidated insights to change something, to engage, to prevent, to respond accordingly?
Now, Hannelore, Rick Gangwani, Betty Wong really like your Digital Acceleration Center. There's a lot of comments going on about that. It just looks great.
They want to join?
I think you have some people hoping I'm going to draw out of the hat a tweet that gets to go to Nestle and see it. But there's only so many people you can cycle through that. So how do you drive this through the broader organization?
This concept is traveling. So we built the symbol on purpose in the center to show that this is really something we mean serious from the center. But there are lots of markets according to their own needs and for, as Paolo said, for also due to requirements that we will have several dots in other markets now. So this concept is, it shows to be successful and yes.
Okay. One of the questions, we've talked about listening. Now let's talk about engaging with online influencers. What value do you see and what are some of the programs that you go about with in terms of engaging online influencers?
We have a brand advocacy program running. So we take this very seriously to identify our brand advocates, and part of the advocates are influencers, so we differentiate in between. So there is a lot of, again, from the center, guidelines and frameworks which we give to our brands and to our markets. You want to add something, Paolo?
Yeah, for China, what I insist on very much now, because they have to ask me, our department before they launch any brand Weibo, and the one thing that we insist on is between 4 to 6 weeks of active listening before they launch anything, so that they know, first of all, if there are things to watch out for, or if there are talk drivers that we can use. I mean, just to, one very good case that we had, for example, very recently, one of our innovations on Fun Banana, little small peelable ice cream that looks like a banana. We did the listening, actually Ogilvy helped us a lot with the listening on this one, and that was the one that informed us a lot on how do we manage the discussion and the and the key influencers on this. So Ogilvy helped us seed these small little fun videos of people consuming it, and before we knew, the consumers were now seeding their own videos or their own photos of how they were enjoying Fun Banana, and at least for 2 months we were the top tracking brand on Weibo, so we were very happy about that. But that was really built on a foundation of listening first before you start engaging. Then you know who the KOLs are, then you know what the hot topics are as well.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of discussion back and forth as to where social media belongs, whether in public relations, marketing, but it really seems like with the active listening, before you start engaging in marketing, you're really going to be responding to what the consumers want and what they're thinking about. Who's driving this cultural transformation? Where's the social media drive coming from?
Well, we have a strong driver in the center with Pete Blackshaw, our global head of digital marketing and social media. And he also leads by example, as he is heading reporting 50% into corporate communication and 50% into the consumer brands. So I think that's the best symbol you can give to the markets. But then again, the markets can decide if they adopt this, and we are exchanging experience around this.
Okay.
But of course, I mean, Nestle in itself is a brand, and somewhere it was said earlier, you learn the best of not only out of failures, you learn the best out of crisis. So if you can manage a crisis, a conversation in a crisis, you can for sure also manage the stories and the positive engagement.
And Hannelore and Paolo, you mentioned that the board has regular visits to Silicon Valley to stay abreast of trends. It really seems like this is being driven from the top through the organization. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, our board just came back from their second journey. They did the first trip last year. And we are visiting then our strategic partnerships, which is also very important in these times, that you work together with the strategic partnerships. Strategic partners, some of them are here in the room, and they also look into joint ventures and startups. So because you need to embrace innovation in this time, so that's something we take very seriously, and we also work closely together. We call this two halves with our technology department, the digital service unit, because the social media is very technology driven. So we people from our people from the center, but also from the main markets, they do regularly these journeys. And as I know now that Beijing is the next Silicon Valley, I think that will even change maybe the destination.
Yes.
Look, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm searching for questions, so if you have them, make sure to use the hashtag SMMAsia. And by the way, Jasper, I've not seen a single comment about my shirt, so I don't know why you think that's trending. Before we go to some of the questions, I spoke at the break with David Ketchum of Byte Communications, and he said that, you know, Fortune 100 companies up here on the panel are great, but a lot in the audience are small to medium-sized businesses. 97% of businesses in Hong Kong are less than 100 employees. So how can we take some of these big company lessons and apply them in a smaller business?
I would say, I mean, the digital acceleration, let's say, center as a unit and as a hardware, yeah, it seems like a very big thing to invest in. In China, we will be building the same center, I mean, before the end of the year. But actually, we started our live listening even before we had the center. And really, you need to look for partners similar to CIC, which can provide you listening services and which can provide you dashboards. And it really doesn't take much to start to do this. And it is really worth the investment for your brand. And perhaps one thing I would also add, for us, the biggest transformation and one of the most game-changing decisions was that when we started the listening platform, I took a decision that the ones who would do the listening would be our consumer services people. You know, why? Because they're on the phone all day and they know how to handle difficult consumers. So I had asked Jeremy from Ogilvy PR, no, please, can you help train our consumer services people to answer questions on our consumer services Weibo? And we've been getting very, very good responses from them. In fact, on the slide, I've got a couple of tweets of how the consumer services team, when they know how to engage in a very human fashion, they're able to change the conversation from a consumer who's complaining, in fact, almost to an advocate. If you could show just a slide again on that one, because it's quite fascinating when you see a sentiment when the consumer is swearing at you, and then after that, you know, the last one especially, Nestle has a very good attitude. I don't know how they found my Weibo. Okay, I'd like to say sorry to Nestle. I shouldn't say bad words. Nestle cares. Your attitude is so great. And we get that all the time. And then, you know, and it's not only that you've turned one consumer, but you've turned one consumer into a positive advocate. And by the way, she has 3,000 fans. So that's a great thing and a great experience.
Well, here in the audience, Elle Lee said she'd tried the Nestle banana and posted it on Weibo. She got 20 reposts and massive interest.
Yep.
So she then includes a link back to her original Weibo posting. Yep. So thank you for that. You. So I guess the question then is, what's next? Where do you see social evolving to within Nestle?
I mean, this is a journey. If you look into this, the DAT has been launched this year in January. We're only halfway through the year in the second half, so there will be new DATs coming now. working in structuring for a company like Nestle around digital is you have different maturities, you're on different parts of your journey. So it is an ongoing learning. It is you evolve with whatever is coming there. I mean, at the moment we are with in most of the countries in the markets we are with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, etc. But in China we are obviously with Weibo and others. So there's a lot. It doesn't stop. So it's like a beta version. So that's also a learning I would like to give to the audience. You need to be flexible. You need to have a sense to respond, and you need to watch what's coming next and be ready for this. So we don't really know what's coming next, but we try to be prepared and to listen.
Yep, and I think to listen and to teach, because James wrote that everyone in the organization needs to know at least something about social media and be engaged in it. It sounds like it's really being driven across the organization. Last thoughts or comments before we wrap up for today? Number one lesson?
Number one lesson, for digital leader, it's really a tough job because you're always tempted between balancing and flexibility, stability and flexibility. As if you're a leader, people look up to you to give some guidance, but you never know what's coming next. So that's a big learning, I think, and that's also a big learning for those who are digital leader. And there's a lot coming with this. Not talking enough about the 24/7 versus sleep, etc.
Yeah. Well, for me, listening is fundamental, and not only listening through your agencies, but bring it in-house. It does change your culture a lot. It has given a lot more confidence to our teams. And also, when you listen, you know how to engage well, and that listening transforms into greater brand engagement, into greater brand advocacy, as we're seeing already with our early success.
Well, thank you both very much. Hannelore for coming all the way from Switzerland, Paolo from coming from Beijing. Without any Nestle bananas, I might lodge a complaint.
No, they're available in Hong Kong. They're very popular here as well.
Okay, well, we'll all be rushing out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.